result is that today it is the Islamic Republic of Iran and its ideas of participatory Islamist governance and an independent foreign policy that has real influence, real power in countries across the Middle East, from Egypt to Bahrain, that were once clearly in America's camp. In strategic terms, the Islamic Republic of Iran has been and is using, through its narrative, not its drones, not its tanks, through its narrative, they are using the political awakening of Middle Eastern publics to alter the very nature of power politics in the Middle East. As we describe in our book, Going to Tehran, this has been an effective foreign policy and national security strategy for the Islamic Republic of Iran, one that is vastly and repeatedly underappreciated in the United States. And at this point, underappreciated in the United States. And at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Flint to continue our discussion.
To pick up on Hillary's point about this soft power strategy being a real strategy for resetting a regional balance of power that Iranian policymakers have long seen as tilted against the Islamic Republic, I think it's important to note, especially for Americans to understand, that it's only an Islamic Republic of Iran which can accrue these kinds of soft power gains. The Shah couldn't have done it. A pro-Western secular Republic of Iran couldn't do it. Only the Islamic Republic of Iran can do it. But as we discuss in our book, instead of recognizing and pondering this, American political policy media elites persist in depicting the Islamic Republic as an illegitimate system so despised by its own population that it is in imminent danger of overthrow. American elites have been doing this literally for more than 30 years, virtually since the Islamic Republic's founding out of the Iranian Revolution. And for more than 30 years, the Islamic Republic has consistently defied their relentless predictions of its collapse or defeat. The Islamic Republic has survived because its basic model, the integration of participatory politics and elections with principles and institutions of Islamic governance and a strong commitment to foreign policy independence, this model is in actual fact what a majority of Iranians living inside their country want. They don't want a political order grounded in Western-style secular liberalism. They want an indigenously generated political order that reflects their cultural and religious values. As the reformist President Mohammad Khatami said shortly before leaving office, they want, these were his words, freedom, independence, and progress within the context of both religiosity and national identity. And that's what the Islamic Republic, with all its flaws, offers Iranians the chance to pursue. This was the vision of Imam Khomeini embodied in the Islamic Republic's constitution. And even those Iranians who want the Islamic Republic to evolve in significant ways, at the end of the day, even most of those Iranians still wanted to be the Islamic Republic of Iran. In the course of our visits to Tehran, a number of the politicians, policymakers, scholars that we talked to have pointed out to us that the Islamic Republic doesn't call itself an Islamic state, like, say, Saudi Arabia does. For that implies a kind of perfection that Iranians deeply invested in the system know they have not attained. In Iran, the Islamic Republic is by definition something that is very much a work in progress. And the Islamic Republic has made progress in a number of impressive ways. Contrary to deeply rooted but ill-informed Western stereotypes, the Islamic Republic has achieved far more progressive outcomes in alleviating poverty, delivering health care, providing educational access, and yes, expanding opportunities for women than the Shah's regime ever did. Hillary and I are happy to go into this more in the Q&A if you like, but let me give you just a couple of examples right now of what I'm talking about. The Islamic Republic has developed a healthcare system that has greatly increased life expectancy and greatly reduced infant and child mortality in Iran. The provision of healthcare to rural areas has been particularly impressive since the revolution. The Islamic Republic has basically equalized health outcomes in urban and rural settings in a manner which is really quite extraordinary in an international context. Get this. There are now Iranian doctors and public health specialists working with state universities and NGOs in the state of Mississippi to introduce Iranian-style rural healthcare delivery into medically underserved parts of the Mississippi Delta. The Islamic Republic has also greatly expanded educational opportunities, vastly increasing literacy rates in Iran, and according to the World Bank, basically eliminating gender disparities in educational access. One facet of women's progress in Iran that remains almost completely unappreciated in the West is the way that access to higher education is altering the status of Iranian women. While the Islamic Republic places restrictions on women, say in matters of dress, for example, that Westerners would consider unacceptable in their own societies, the majority of university students in Iran are now female. The majority of students in the best universities in Iran are now female. The majority of medical students in Iran are now female. And women's presence is increasingly felt across an array of academic and professional disciplines. Now, notwithstanding the Islamic Republic's staying power, foreign policy pundits here who in many cases have no direct connection to on-the-ground reality inside Iran, and a cadre of so-called Iran experts, many of whom are expatriates or Iranian Americans whose families fled the revolution and don't want to see the Islamic Republic succeed, these commentators continue to misread and misinterpret Iranian politics, telling us that the system is on the verge of collapse. One of our themes in going to Tehran is that until Americans stop listening to the agenda-driven, fact-free analysis coming from such people, the United States will continue to get its Iran policy wrong and will continue losing ground in the Middle East. A good example of what I'm talking about in this regard came in 2009, when in a collective act of analysis by wishful thinking, American elites focused on former Prime Minister Mir Hossein Mousavi's campaign to unseat incumbent President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad in that year's Iranian presidential election, and on the Green movement that emerged out of Mousavi's campaign as the key to solving America's strategic problems in the Middle East. American and other Western elites widely anticipated a Mousavi victory when in June 2009, Ahmadinejad won. Those same elites almost universally condemned the outcome as a fraud. They did so even though every methodologically sound poll conducted in Iran before or after the election, including polls conducted by Western polling groups, 14 polls in all, show that Ahmadinejad's re-election with roughly 2/3 of the vote, which is what the official results show that he got, was eminently plausible. And Americans embraced a narrative of election fraud even though neither Mousavi nor anyone else ever presented any evidence of how the election was stolen. This never demonstrated but fervently espoused narrative conditioned American and Western elites' romanticization of the Green movement, widely portrayed in the West as a mass popular uprising poised to sweep away the Islamic Republic, perhaps within just a few months. But it was evident to anyone prepared to look soberly at reality that even at its height, the Green movement did not represent anything close to a majority of Iranians, and that within a week of the June 2009 election, the movement's social base was already contracting. But the myth of the Islamic Republic's illegitimacy and instability did not die as a result of the Green Movement's failure. Indeed, it got a new lease on life in early 2011 when the Arab awakening began. Through the pro-green lens that continues to shape most Western commentary on Iranian politics, it seemed inevitable that the waves of popular discontent, like those that took out pro-American leaders in Tunisia and Egypt, forced a leadership change in Yemen's U.S. allied government, and seriously threatened another U.S. allied government in Bahrain, would engulf the Iranian government too. Most of the pundits who had jumped on the regime change bandwagon in 2009 hopped back on for another ride. On February 21st, 2011, billionaire financier George Soros, appearing on CNN's GPS with Fareed Zakaria, offered a bet that, quote, the Iranian regime will not be there in a year's time, close quote. 2 days later, in foreign policy, Hillary and I took Soros up on his wager. Now, I recognize the notion of two former U.S. government officials turned university professors betting George Soros on anything might seem a tad absurd, but that's what we did. We even bet that not only would the Islamic Republic still be Iran's government in a year's time, but that the balance of influence and power in the Middle East would be tilted even further in its favor. Almost 2 years have elapsed since Soros made his wager. I have to say we're pretty eager to collect on it. Later in 2011, Western analysts focused on the back and forth between Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, the Islamic Republic's supreme leader, and President Ahmadinejad over the resignation and reinstatement of the intelligence minister and other issues. The same cast of Iran experts, the mainstream media, gave these developments overblown, even hysterical treatment, portraying them as, quote, unprecedented signs of an insecure regime fracturing at the top. Such analyses revealed, at the very least, lamentable ignorance about the Islamic Republic's political history, which since the revolution has been marked by much the same kind of intense competition among elites over policy and power that you see, say, in the United States. Tensions between Imam Khomeini, the Islamic Republic's founding father, and its first elected president, Abul Hassan Bani Sadr, resulted in Bani Sadr's impeachment during wartime in 1981. After the reformist Mohammad Khatami became president in 1997, his disagreements with Ayatollah Khamenei, who had by then succeeded Imam Khomeini as supreme leader, those disagreements were at least as contentious as the jockeying between Khamenei and Ahmadinejad. In Iran, tensions between elected presidents and the leader are hardly new, and they're not an indicator of systemic crisis. They are politics as usual in a system with multiple power centers and institutionalized checks and balances. But in the fact-free approach of many so-called Iran experts here in the United States, if Iranians display the sort of contestation over policy relative position within their system that virtually everywhere else in the world we call normal politics, then our Iran experts tell us that this is something abnormal and pathological and that the system must be coming apart. It is not. Despite these experiences and other similar experiences, too numerous to lay out here, but that we go through in the book, American political and policy elites continue promoting the idea that of the myth of the Islamic Republic's illegitimacy and fragility. Today, this myth comes in two interlocking versions. One, that sanctions are now finally working to undermine the Islamic Republic's basic stability, and two, that the Arab awakening has left the Islamic Republic isolated in its own neighborhood. On sanctions, Hillary and I have just returned from our most recent visit to Iran last month. We're happy to talk more about current economic conditions, social and political conditions in the Q&A. For now, let me say simply that no one who has walked the streets of Tehran, who has seen that Iran's economy is not collapsing, or who's talked to a range of Iranian